Unit 3, Activity 4 is all about illustrating fashion. And this is important because your summative task for this unit is illustrating fashion. Let's get started. The decline of fashion illustration can be traced back to Vogue. So blame Vogue. In the late 1930s, Vogue began to replace its illustrated covers with photographic ones because the preference of photography was huge. And this shift really killed fashion illustration for a while. And it's been regarded as a precious art ever since. So if you browse through a fashion magazine right now, you're probably going to find several examples of fashion illustration. Some of these illustrations can be quite primitive, and others can be very sophisticated. So within the industry, there are a range of different types of fashion illustrations. The very basic ones are technical drawings, which are used to create an actual pattern. Other ones are more artistic statements, and fashion illustration is definitely experiencing a renaissance. Basically since the 1980s, this kind of illustration has been making a comeback, and digital illustrators are also available. And so there's an unparalleled number of fashion illustration styles today. And an illustrator named Toby Guido notes that it's boom time for fashion illustration. So why did it come back? There was an economic boom in the 80s and 90s, just before you were born. And it was during this time that several magazines, such as Interview and Details, these are magazines from New York, Vanity from Italy, and Le Mode en Peinture from France, they began to feature illustrated covers. They also decided to feature fashion editorials that were illustrated, or end pages that were illustrated. And these illustrators, whose work was appearing in these publications, started to get more notoriety. So big names in illustration is François Berthaud and Ruben Toledo. Illustrated advertisements started to reappear in newspapers and fashion publications as a result. One of the most influential of these illustrators was Jean-Philippe Delhomme. He created the advertising illustrations for cutting-edge retailer Barney's. And from 1993 to 1996, he did all of the advertising illustrations for them. Barney's New York is really credited with pioneering illustrations and giving it its comeback. And from Barney's, it just kind of trickled down. So the first part of the 21st century, enter the new millennium, was accompanied by a proliferation of fashion and lifestyle magazines. But also with the popularity of the internet, we've got websites, zines, and other internet sources and types of new media. And photography has really had a difficult time keeping up. And it also has a harder time presenting fresh, new, and inspiring ideas. So this unit is all about fashion illustration. And fashion illustration is really being used right now as a medium to help new publications stand out from the crowd. So what is it? It's definitely considered an art form, but it's also a vehicle used for advertising, marketing, and merchandising within all three levels of the fashion industry, so primary, secondary, and tertiary. Although you've just read an extremely abbreviated history, or listened to an extremely abbreviated history of fashion illustration in the 20th and 21st century, it is important for you to understand that fashion illustration is used as a form of communication, much like art. It is through sketching, drawing, and experimenting with silhouettes, images, color, texture, lines, shape, and fabric. And this experimenting is done on paper. Fashion designers are able to translate their research and give shape to the ideas and designs in their head. And being able to draw your concepts is a huge starting point for garment creation. And it will also provide you with a solid idea of the quality of your ideas before they're created from fabric. Let's talk about working drawings, which are a form of fashion illustration. But as you can guess from the title, and as you can see from the picture, they're not as exciting in consideration of art. So working drawings, specs, technical drawings. All of these are different words for a form of illustration that's used to communicate all the important information needed about a garment. And this information is used to proceed to a pattern development and actual production of the apparel. So you can think of this form of illustration as a diagramical detailed drawing of your designs. This form of illustration is very graphic and illustrates the garment structure through the rendering of simple lines. These simple lines communicate the garment style and construction details, including seam lines, such as here, darts, here, pockets, here, fastenings, here, and top stitching, here. Working drawings are often used to support fashion sketches, and they're always rendered with the correct body proportions and scales because this is the drawing that's used to make the pattern. And the pattern drafter or the pattern cutter looks at this working drawing when developing the pattern. Fashion sketches are often drawn out of proportion, and so the accuracy of working drawings in comparison to fashion sketches is very instrumental in the actual production of the garment. So working drawings are drawn without the representation of a figure. So you can see there's no person here, there's no color, there's no texture, there's no form. In this drawing, both the front and the back of the garment, or maybe it's the other way around, this is the front and this is the back, I'm not quite sure. Pockets on the back of a skirt is kind of strange, so let's say this is the front. Both the front and the back of the garment are included, and this shows the information concerning the design of the garment. Ideas like pockets and darts and seams is not as prevalent in fashion illustration. Working drawings can be drawn by hand, but also digitally. So that's one thing that fashion sketch and working drawings have in common. Typically, working drawings have certain conventions. They're generally, if they're done by hand, produced with fine liner black pens. So one width, a thicker width, 0.8 millimeters if you are using the proper terms or going to Michael's to look for the specific pen. So 0.8 millimeters is used to draw all the seam lines. So these ones here, the darts, which are here, and the details, like the button. Oops, not the button. The details like this here. And the other width, so a much lighter width, 0.3 millimeters is the standard, is used to indicate all the fastenings, so the buttons and the zippers, as well as the top stitching. So you can see these little fine dotty lines here are much thinner and lighter than the dark, so that is what they use. Moving forward, it's going to be your task in Unit 3, Activity 4, to actually test your hand at some fashion illustration. We aren't going to be doing a working drawing because I don't really think that we have the technical skills to understand the seams and the darts and the pockets quite yet. So what you're going to be doing is doing something more creative, so more similar to this image here. You're going to draw a figure or download a croquis from online. A croquis is like a stick person mannequin thing, and then you're going to draw your design. So please read the assignment for the summative task and make sure that you're including all of the things that I'm asking you to include. I hope you have fun with this task. This is one of the first times we get to get away a little bit from theory and move into something a little bit more creative, but don't worry, Unit 4 is all about creativity and construction. So have fun, and we'll talk to you later.